All Elite Wrestling has released official top 5 rankings ahead of tonight's Fyter Fest Night 1. And let's start things off in the men's singles division. And on top, we have the AEW World Champion Jon Moxley sporting a 13-0 record. TNT Champion Cody Rhodes in at 13-1. Then in the top-ranked spot, Maxwell Jacob Friedman, MJF, is in at 7-0. Brian Cage is in at 5-0. Lance Archer, 8-1 in the number 3 spot. In the number 4 spot is Brody Lee at 5-1. And in the number 5 spot, we've got Chris Jericho with a 2-1 record. Now, one thing that is an interesting sort of stat from the men's singles rankings, with the 7 wrestlers in the rankings, there are only 4 total losses, and they all come from other wrestlers in the rankings. So Jon Moxley is undefeated, MJF is undefeated, and Brian Cage is undefeated. Cody, Lance Archer, Brody Lee, and Chris Jericho all only have 1 loss apiece. And in the case of Lance Archer, Brody Lee, and Chris Jericho, that loss all came at the hands of Jon Moxley. Cody Rhodes' 1 loss came at the hands of MJF. Now, at Fyter Fest, world champion Jon Moxley is scheduled to defend against the number 2 ranked Brian Cage on the second night of Fyter Fest. However, it's not clear if that match will eventually be postponed because of Jon Moxley's situation. Now, Brody Lee teamed with Colt Cabana and defeated Joey Janela and Sonny Kiss on Dynamite last week, and Lee and Cabana will team with Stu Grayson to take on SCU next week at Fyter Fest. Chris Jericho is also scheduled to face Orange Cassidy on the second night of Fyter Fest as well, while the TNT champion Cody is scheduled to defend his title against the unranked Jake Hager on tonight's episode. Then we go to the AEW women's division, and much like the men's singles rankings, there was no movement in the rankings this week. We've still got Hikaru Shida with a 12-1 record at the top of the division. She defeated Red Velvet this week on Dynamite. In the number 1 ranked position, we've got Nyla Rose sporting a 6-2 record. She will take on an opponent to be named later on the second night of Fyter Fest. Penelope Ford in at the number 2 position with a 4-3 record. She will challenge Hikaru Shida for the AEW Women's Championship tonight. Then we've got Big Swole in at number 3. She's got a 4-3 record. She seems to have a feud going on with Britt Baker. And we've got injured wrestlers in the number 4 and number 5 position in the women's rankings. Chris Statlander is sporting a 4-4 record. She recently tore her ACL and is likely out for the remainder of the year. And then we've got in the number 5 position, Britt Baker. She is also sporting an injury, but she is going to be back around September, they figure. Moving on to the AEW Tag Team Division, champions Kenny Omega and Hangman Page are in the top spot, but they will look to defend those titles tonight at Fyter Fest against the number 1 ranked team, Chuck Taylor and Trent, the Best Friends, who are sporting a 10-3 record at the moment. In at the number 2 spot, the Dark Order, Stu Grayson and Evil Uno are undefeated with a 6-0 record. Stu Grayson, as we mentioned before, will team with Brody Lee and Colt Cabana against SCU at Fyter Fest. The Young Bucks come in with a 4-2 record in the number 3 spot. They defeated Peter Avalon and Brandon Cutler on Dark this week. They will team with FTR to take on the Butcher and the Blade and the Lucha Bros next week at Fyter Fest. The Natural Nightmares come in at the number 4 ranked position with a 5-1 record. They're going to be out of action for a little while as QT Marshall is going to be away for a little bit due to exposure to the COVID-19 virus. In at the number 5 spot, we've got Private Party with a 4-2 record. They are going to be accompanied to the ring by Matt Hardy at Fyter Fest to take on Santana and Ortiz, Proud and Powerful, and those are your AEW Top 5 rankings.